Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I've been in this group for 20 years, and it's meant a lot to me. So today I want to talk about accumulating wealth in real estate. And it starts with a story. I had a client last year. Her name is Janice. She called me up. She was living in a very vertical house, and she said she's at a point in her life where that many stairs just didn't work for her anymore, and she just needed to move to one-level living. So I go meet her. I see her at her house, and she's there. Her daughter's there with her. The grandkids are all there. They're playing on the floor. It's just this really warm, nice environment. And we get to talking. What she shares with me is that her father was a sharecropper, that 60 years ago, she moved from South Carolina to Washington, D.C. She got a job with the government. She used a VA loan to purchase a home with 100% financing. And what's remarkable about this story is she's selling a house now that's going to put over $500,000 in her pocket. And that's one of the great success stories about owning real estate. And for someone, from the daughter of a sharecropper, that's really the second thing that's happening there is you're getting for the first time is to have some generational wealth that can be passed from her to her kids and her grandkids in a manner that her father wasn't able to do for her. With that said, people are always coming to me saying, I want to invest in real estate, what should I do? And the answer is always the same, it never changes. You start with the home that you live in. And if you do that, you're going to make your money two ways. The first is over time, a very long period of time, property values tend to go up. The second thing that happens is most people are buying a house and they're using a 30-year fixed mortgage. And so at the same time that the property values are going up, you keep making those payments on that mortgage, and over time, the amount that you owe goes down. The difference between how much the property's appreciated and how much you've reduced your debt, that's the equity that you have in your house. That's where the wealth is created. The most important thing to know about this is that it takes a long time. So when we think about appreciation and the reduction of debt, we can sort of unpack those into two components. Let's just take the appreciation side first. Just to give you some level of perspective, if you were to buy a $500,000 house and it was to appreciate at 3% a year over the next 10 years, that house 10 years later would be worth about $670,000. So about $170,000 of equity gain to yourself. That's a meaningful amount of money. Take that same house though and let it run for a full 30 years, and over that 30-year period, what you'll find is that house went from $500,000 to $1.2 million. If during that same 30-year period you paid down your debt entirely, now you're looking at a really nice cash distribution on the date of sale. That's a meaningful accumulation of wealth. The second part of this, so appreciation is one half of it, and the main thing to understand in appreciation is you're not making your money in a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's holding on to it for a long period of time is where the money's really made, because markets are going to go up, they're going to go down, they're going to go up, they're going to go down. Historically though, they tend to go substantially more up than they do down. Debt reduction is the other side of the equation on how you're accumulating wealth. And so here's how this happens. So first off, the one thing that most people miss when they buy a house is people are very focused on the price of the house itself. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the cost of the money can actually be more expensive than the price of the house. And to give you an example, if you buy a $500,000 house and you're using a $500,000 mortgage to get that house, if your interest rate is 5.3%, then you'll pay $500,000 to the seller to buy the house, and you'll pay another $500,000 in interest. So it's about a 50-50 split at the 5.3% interest rate. Any amount over 5.3, you're beginning to actually pay more in interest to the bank than you actually gave to the seller in the acquisition of the house. Currently, we're in a historic time when the rates are substantially below 5.3%, and it's one of the great reasons why home ownership is so popular now is because the cost of money is cheap, because you're getting a deal on that side of the equation. So people get really excited about, I negotiated to sell this and I negotiated to sell this. The reality is, if you're buying a house for less than 4% interest rates, where they are now, you're getting a deal just because of that and for no other reason. So debt reduction, how does that work? So you go to your lender, you get a loan, and the bank's going to say, all right, on this 30-year mortgage, we want you to pay this fixed amount of money every single month. And what the bank's going to do is they're going to take the debt that you have, multiply it times the interest rate that you signed up for, and divide it by 12. And they're going to say that's the amount of interest you owe us on this given month, and that's going to be the vast majority of this monthly payment. But whatever's left over, that small percentage left over, that's going to go to debt reduction. So on month one, a small amount of that payment reduces the amount of debt, so that on month two, you now owe just a little bit less in principal. So when they multiply it times the interest rate, the amount of interest that you're going to pay the next month is going to be a little bit less, and the amount of debt reduction you're getting is going to be a little bit more. Multiply that out through several years, and guess what? The implications of that is very minimal. It's not nearly as much as you think, because all of the interest is front-loaded, the way this program works. One of the truths in life is it's always good to be the bank when you're lending money, because they get paid first. But here's the reality of it, is when you hit the 15-year mark, at 15 years something magical happens. And what it is the amount of interest you're paying and the amount of debt reduction that you're paying, a principal payoff, is at about the 50-50 split. And so for every payment after that 15th year, you're starting to get this snowball effect where you're paying more and more debt down faster and faster. And that's where a big portion of your accumulation of wealth is really happening. So what are your options? So you can do a 30-year fixed, and it just takes the full 30 years to pay that off. One of the other options is a 15-year mortgage. Now, 15-year mortgage has a lot of pros and cons. The pro is that, yes, you pay it off in 15 years and you accumulate a lot of equity quickly. The con is that the payment's going to be higher, and a lot of times it's just harder to afford a higher payment. And so here's the thing. When you're buying a house, it's really important. Most people are buying a payment. Like, what's the most that you can actually afford to own that property? And most people want to buy the nicest house they can get for their payment that they can afford. And as a result of that, a 15-year mortgage doesn't work for a lot of people. And keep in mind that buying a house is expensive. So you want to buy the best house you can that you think you're going to stay in the longest. And trust me, this is coming from a realtor. You don't want to get in that cycle of having to buy and sell and buy and sell. That's how I make a living, but it's taking money out of your pocket. To the extent you can buy one house and sit there for a very long period of time, you're going to be much better off. So with respect to that, the 15-year mortgage can work, but it doesn't work for everybody. But there's a hybrid, and that is you do the 30-year fixed program, and then you take one payment, divide that payment by 12, and that's going to be 1/12, and add that to every payment that you're going to make from this point on. And effectively what will happen is over the course of a year, you'll have made the equivalent of 13 payments. And by doing that, you're going to pay down your mortgage about 4.5 years faster, and you'll convert a 30-year mortgage into a 25.5-year mortgage. And then to the extent you have more money later on in time, you can increase that amount that you're adding to your principal and continuing to pay down your debt even faster. Here's the reality though. That's not something you can just sort of say, I'll do it when I have the money. If this is something that you're interested in, and I've done it and it works unbelievably well, the trick is that it has to be automatic and consistent. So you have to set it up with your lender. Just the day you get that loan in place, just set it up where you're paying a little bit extra every month and just let it run. Because if you have to think about it or you have to sort of wait for that 1 month where you got the bonus, it's never going to work out the way you thought it was. All right, so now you have a pretty good sense of how you make money in real estate as a function of the appreciation and reduction of debt. But it always leads to the next thing, and that is, Ron, I want to become a landlord. I want to own rental property. So of course everybody does. And I want to burst the first bubble right out of the bat. When you buy that property and you're using debt to buy it, you're not going to make the cash flow that you anticipate you're going to make. I can promise you whatever rent you receive, minus the mortgage, minus whatever vacancies you have, the fix-ups that are going to just naturally happen, at the end of every month, there's not going to be a whole lot left over. And whatever amount that you actually accumulate over a series of months, dishwasher's going to break, roof's going to leak, you're going to need to repaint it, and that money's just going to get wiped out. However, if you hold on to that rental property for a long time, a very long time, as we've talked about, two things are going to happen. You should know what those two things are now, right? One is the property is slowly but surely going to appreciate by historical norms. And two is someone else is now paying down your debt. And that's where the money is made, especially once you got that property for a long period of time and you've reached that 15-year mark on the mortgage where every payment is going to debt reduction and it's just a quick gain in equity. So let's say you own this property now, and you're very excited about it, but at some point it's time to sell it. Well, we do have taxes in this country, and you have to pay the IRS. And the IRS has created, there's 3 mechanisms that are out there that can help home ownership. One, we started off the best investment is in your own home. So the IRS says if it's your primary residence, if you've lived in it 2 of the last 5 years, when you go to sell your home, they're going to say that the first $250,000 if you're single, or the first $500,000 if you're married filing jointly, is going to be exempt from tax. So that's just a freebie that you get that allows you to put more money in your pocket. If it's a rental property, and we see a lot of people do this, people will buy a rental property at one point in their life, will have a lot of gains, and for whatever reason, that's just not the property they want to own anymore. They want to switch that equity to another property. So many times it's a much more expensive property. And what the IRS will allow you to do through a 1031 exchange is, and you have to follow some very specific rules, but provided you do it, you can take all of the equity from here and move it to this next property, and all of the taxes that would have normally been paid at this point in time get deferred into the next property that you're buying, so that when you sell that one, then you'll have to recapture and pay those taxes at that point in time.
Or sell it again and defer it again.
Or defer it again, yeah. Or move back in and do the 2 of the last 5 year thing and make it your primary residence. There's everything has little caveats, but there's great opportunities here to work within the system. The third one that's most people don't know about, but it's becoming more and more popular, is a self-directed IRA. Everyone's familiar with their IRA or a 401k, and typically that money is invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. However, a self-directed IRA, what that allows you to do is actually invest your money in real estate. And what's nice about it is that money is growing in a tax, it's growing tax-free. You don't have to pay the taxes that are accumulating in that IRA until you hit that retirement age and you begin your distributions. So the nice thing is whenever you can grow money tax-free, it allows you to reinvest that money and get more money on that money throughout this period of time. So personally, you can't be a realtor and talk about investing in real estate without having bought something. So the first investment property I ever bought, this was back in early 2000. I've been watching this one market near George Washington University, and there's always been a historic shortage of student housing there. And this agent that really knew that market well, she and I were always talking about it, and I watched the property values go from $40,000, these were for efficiencies in one-bedroom condos, they went from $40,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 to $80,000. I'm just watching these things go up. And eventually this agent says to me, Ron, you talk about buying all the time, but you've never bought anything. I found a great unit for you, and I think you should buy it. I'm like, yeah, okay, and she goes, here's the contract, sign it now. And you hit that point where it's like, okay, am I a talker or am I a doer? And the numbers worked, everything made sense, and I trusted the information she was giving me, so I signed the contract. And then I said, do you think I can see this house that I just bought? So she was nice enough to let me in. That was very thoughtful of her, of course. And so Winnie, my wife, the 2 of us go down there, and I walk in, and I just get this awful pit in my stomach. I mean, this is straight out of the 1970s. I mean, everything is just so cosmetically dated, and I can't believe what I just bought. I'm thinking, how can I get out of this deal? And Winnie's walking around, she looks at it and she goes, it's perfect, we'll take it. and so that was, so we bought that for $80,000, and we bought it using a 15-year mortgage. So now it's 15 years later. So guess how much we owe? 0, right? And the property's gone from $80,000 to approximately $200,000, and it generates $1,000 a month of positive cash flow. So thank goodness for my wife, who had the foresight to make sure we stayed in that deal. But that gives you a sense of how investing in real estate works when you're doing it in not the home that you live in. But the thing about that $1,000 a month is a lot of people have what they'll call a freedom number, and a freedom number is how much passive income can you have per month that allows you to live the lifestyle so that you can just not have to work anymore. And so you can see mathematically, you could take that example where this property now generates $1,000 of positive cash flow a month, and you can say, what is my lifestyle? Do I need $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, whatever it is? And the earlier you start in life sort of working to get that freedom number, then that's something that you can mathematically build up to, and it's something that just will happen automatically to the extent that you continue to invest in real estate. You need to start young and eventually pay off those mortgages, but the more property you have, then the more proceeds you'll have to continue helping you buy more property, so that by the time you hit retirement age, you'll have a built-in retirement mechanism. It can work really well. We talk about numbers a lot when you buy real estate, especially me, being a former CPA, numbers come naturally. But when we started talking about this, we talked about how Janice, when I arrived at her house, she was there, her daughter was there, the kids were there, and it was just this really happy, sort of joyous place to be. And it's very easy to always think about home ownership as an investment that has a financial dividend. But the reality is when you're investing in real estate, you're investing in far more than just land and mortgages and numbers and potential hopeful future profits. That's just the icing on the cake. What you're really investing in is yourself and your family and your community, and you're building this opportunity where it's a place, it's your safe space, it's where you have your peace of mind, it's a place where you're in control, and it's a place where a lot of your memories are going to be created, and it's yours that you own, and it'll make a difference in your life. And the one thing, everybody on my real estate team, the one thing that we believe more than anything else is that the purpose of owning a home is to make your life better. And our goal as agents is to really make sure that we're focusing on not only that financial part, which people tend to focus on and is very important, but those intangibles, the emotional side of it, the human side of it, to make sure that living in the house and that the house that you buy gives you that happiness that you were hoping for. And as a, the people in this room, there's a number of you, we recognize that whenever we have the opportunity to help you buy or sell, you're letting us into your lives, and we really appreciate that. And there's a number of people in this room that have used me 2 or 3 times in the process of doing that, and I just want to say how much that means to us, how thankful I am for the referrals that all of you have given me, and I appreciate what this group has done in helping grow my practice as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So do we have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
So if interest rates right now are, say, 3.5%, does it make sense to be paying that money down as opposed to investing that money in the market or something else that's really cheap money?
So there's no right, there's a mathematical right answer. Well, there's always hypotheticals, right? It's obviously, if you can invest the money and make more money on it, then the mathematical right answer is to invest the money somewhere else. Then there's also what we call the human answer, which is, how do you feel about having debt? I want to be debt-free as early in life as I can. It's just something I want. Even if that means that hypothetically I could have chosen to invest my money in other places and maybe have more, I think there's something that comes with being debt-free, a certain peace of mind. So that's important to me. So you have to choose both the mathematical answer and the one that also is the one that you sleep best at night. And there's no right answer to that. I do a hybrid is what I really do. I invest some money and I take some portion of it and I pay down debt faster. And paying down debt faster can make a huge difference. I mean, when the house that Winnie and I bought in 1999, we were making a lot of advance payments on that, and then we eventually switched it to a 15-year mortgage, and the debt reduction that we had on that house eventually allowed us to refinance all of it out and do a massive renovation. So and that renovation created a house for which living in it has just given us tremendous amount of joy because the architecture, the style, the size, the space. I could argue very easily that it was a poor financial decision, but I would also say it was the single best decision I ever made in my life in terms of personal happiness. So sometimes you just have to weigh each against the other, always with the idea, the purpose of...
What you're living in is it's an investment, but it's also your life.
It's your life,
right.
Yes. Hi.
Hey, Ron. In this area, can you explain a little bit about how location can be such an impactful thing when it comes to...
Sure. So I think, I like to think of the DC area as think of it as a target or a bullseye. And at the center of that bullseye is DC. And you can think of a couple areas, Logan, Capitol Hill, DuPont has sort of the ultimate center in that bullseye where the cost of the land is the most expensive land we have. And each consecutive rung you go out, the land gets a little bit more affordable. And so what we find is the people that are buying in these close-in locations, that's where it's going to be the most expensive. And you also tend to have the highest levels of appreciation, and in downward markets, they seem to be protected areas as well. Each rung you go out, it can still be quite expensive, but what you find as you go further and further outside the Beltway, it might not be as expensive. And what's interesting when it comes to rentals is it's all baked into the pricing. So if you're buying property downtown, you're going to find you're going to get a much lower rate of return on a cash-on-cash investment for a downtown location, because the future appreciation is already baked into the price. Where the further you buy outside the Beltway, you're going to find you're going to actually be able to get a higher cash-on-cash return because the probability of appreciating as much is also baked into the price. The bidding wars do tend to happen inside the Beltway more than outside the Beltway, and I think a big part of that is the desirability of being in the proximity of being downtown. The other thing is being near a walkable location or being near a metro. To the extent you can combine a walkable location which has restaurants, shopping, and entertainment with a metro, those are your hottest locations, and that's the heart of DC, areas in Rockville, so forth.
I have a question over here.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you had mentioned adding essentially a 13th payment to
Yes.
your mortgage. Is that something that you have to negotiate when you get your loan originally?
So the
or can
great
you add
thing,
that
it's
on?
negotiated on your behalf, is when you sign your loan documents, you're going to see that you have one of the disclosures your lender's going to make to you, it says that you have the right to prepay this loan. And as long as you have that right, then at any time of your choosing, it's a unilateral decision, you choose to do it and they have to accept the payments, the prepayments.
Gotcha.
Most conventional loans do have the right to prepay, so it's already baked in for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, that's it for the
Thank you.
questions.
All right.